All right, good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday morning. Thank you for joining us through Parenting Through COVID-19. I think this is like our seventh episode we've done with all of you, and so we're glad you're here. I am really struggling on how to get a live story going today. It usually tells me I can hit the plus sign, and now I can't do it. So I really am not building. I thought I was building some mastery on um, Instagram, and I just cannot figure it out. So if anybody knows how to get the screen where it says go live with your story, then that would be awesome. But for the life of me, I can't seem to figure it out. So you know what we're going to do? We're just going to make a video on Instagram and see how that works. We're going to talk more about Build Mastery today. So if you're with us, come join us. We hope you are here. Oh, see, now I can't even make this thing work. All right, video. Let's see, press and hold to record. Oh no, it says like I have to hold it the whole time? I'm so confused. So if anybody is watching us this morning and knows how to make a video and start my story, I'm going to discard that one because I'm really confused about Face or Instagram today. This has been like an absolute struggle. I'll tell you, this last week of trying to figure out and learn all of this technology. I actually finally reached out to a friend of mine who is like was the social media director for a large health and wellness personal growth company, and asked her, I was just like, can you just give me some tips? And so she so graciously texted me back last night in the middle of a very big launch week for her and said, absolutely, like we can talk this weekend. And so I'm looking forward to having a conversation with her where she can tell me all the things. So see, when I go to my personal page, it says there's a plus sign by my story. But when I go to my DBT in schools page, there's not. It just gives me what my story is, but it doesn't thank you for my coffee. It doesn't give me the plus sign to say that I can add to my story. So I am 100% totally confused. Wait, maybe I see a camera there. Nope, that says new video chat. Maybe there's a camera there. Oh wait, is this here? I figured it out. Okay, gosh, that took me almost 3 minutes to figure it out. Hello, Instagram. Sorry, we're a little bit late with you. I could not figure out how to get Facebook Live working this morning, or not Instagram Live stories to work this morning. So I did it, and now you're
and you haven't missed anything, and I'm trying to get into the camera.
Oh, sorry, because everything's turned in the wrong direction.
All right.
We are constantly moving every day. Our computers and phones from our office where we do this parenting podcast all to the living room where we do the parenting,
right?
Or the Steps A class for students. I am all over the place.
Yeah, you might have to have a drink of coffee or water.
Okay, so since a lot has happened since we were last here, a lot.
Well, like we were here Wednesday, Monday we saw them. Right?
Monday was a pretty big day. So on Monday, let's just kind of backtrack for a moment. What we talked about on Monday, we taught the A-B skills of accumulating positives in the short and long term, and how to build mastery. Both ways to kind of add deposits of joy into your bank, either by doing a pleasurable activity or identifying your goals and taking small steps to reach them.
Right.
And then doing hard things.
Right. The building mastery was more about trying to do things that just maybe hard to do or a half step above some of your abilities, and trying to get some mastery in your life. And I think that I almost want to start back off with the mastery piece, because for the last 48 hours, Liz and I have had this big roller coaster that's been going on, and just trying to work with our kids. And so we've now had struggles with our kids for the school stuff happening on Mondays instead of like Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, when they're kind of getting tired of they're done with the school. Now when it's happening Monday morning and afternoon, you're like, whoa, that's going to be for a long week. Mm-hmm. And so we've been trying to put in more energy to our kids, right? And they're struggling. And so we try to absorb some of that energy and some of that frustration that they have. So we soak it in, and Liz soaks it in. And I've been doing my work with the university. And so there's an added layer of time that I can't spend with the kids. So you're doing more. So you soak in again the stress that's there. And what we find is that we've soaked in a lot of the stress and we don't have enough time to do things. And by the time we get the kids to bed, all we do is bring out our stress sponge on each other, right? And so trying to find ways to build mastery, to feel like that we are competent as a parent and as a partner. Boy, for the last 40 hours, that's been just a challenge, right? It's just been hard. And so I just want to highlight that. And if you're a single parent, I can't imagine. I don't know where you bring out your sponge. And so kudos to you. And just also then to say, you try to do that. At least, be kind to yourself. Use some of those improved skills that we talked about. And so I think it's really hard to figure out where to vent that piece, right? And so I think that that's been a kind of our challenge, and that you're trying to now I'm trying to find a balance, right? So our inside needs are different right now. That I'm trying to find a balance so that we can try to master this whole thing, right? Because our schedule keeps changing. And you're like, I don't want balance. I need to find time for me, right? So you're trying to say that you're giving so much that some of your priorities of who you are, what you value, are beginning to be missed.
Yeah, totally. And that was kind of a big kind of lead up to where we've been, and we'll kind of jump back to where. But I'll say what Jim's saying is true. Like, we were doing some prayer requests with our small group last night, and Jim was so kind and asking for prayers for like balance and synthesis and helping us to find the middle path. And then I turned around and said, I just actually want prayers for selfishness. Because
for healthy reasons,
right? Because I am so not taking care of myself, or was not taking care of myself as effectively. And I needed to really shift that around. But let's jump back for a moment, because I really want to talk about what happened on Monday that kind of fits with the accumulating positives and building mastery.
I'm going to go put that back up on the board. Can I do that? Or you want to keep it except for a reason?
No, you can do that.
Okay.
Or I would just write it over here, because I might talk about that.
Okay.
So we talked about when we got off the live on Monday morning, to go make a list, to go think about what you're going to do for accumulating positives or building some mastery during the next couple of days. And if you did that, awesome. We want to hear about what you did, and tell us about that. Good morning, Cindy. Good morning, Lynn and Ashley. Glad you guys are here with us. And so the first thing we actually did right after we got off of our live stream on Monday morning, we got a text message from a friend saying, saw the article in the paper, really awesome, guys, glad you're doing what you're doing. Something to that effect from one of my friends and colleagues. And we had known this article was being done. We had no idea when it was going to come out. I'd been thinking about it the night before. And so that was a really pleasant surprise. So we kind of pulled it up online, and we saw that it was like on the front page of the Seattle Times website. And we're like, that's super cool. And before the kids got up or anything that morning, we decided, like, you know what, let's go take a walk. Like, let's go walk over to the store and see if we can find the newspaper.
Little corner market
by our house. Yeah, we have, and and so Jim had his gloves, and we had our masks on that we wear. And I don't go into the stores or anything. Just he goes. And so, but just even that bit of walking, like, what is it, like the 6 blocks to the store in the morning by ourselves, like, felt like such a positive and building joy there. So that was the first kind of piece of just like doing something and forcing ourselves to like go for a walk, and then remembering we have to do that. Hey, look, good morning, Betty. Thanks for joining us. And then we got the newspaper, and it was total joy, because we were actually at the article about these live streams and the skills class we're doing for students were on the front page.
Right.
So that was pretty humbling and exciting for us. I've never seen, had barely like been in a paper except when I was in high school for like the local paper for like sports or something. But that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So that was like a real high for the day, right? And then just really kind of jumping in with the kids for the week. And then 2 lows that happened that day is one, like noticing that my kids were already getting anxious an hour or two into the morning about the number of assignments they had for the week. And that kind of alarmed us. And then let's roll into the 2:30 press conference that we had here in Washington, where the governor announced that schools would be closed for the rest of the academic year and stick with distance learning. And then there was like, oh, okay, this is not 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. This is 3 months. And there's that, again, that shift of like a lot of sadness. I actually got teary-eyed watching it just because I think there's a lot of sadness that goes with them not being able to return to school and then moving into, radical acceptance.
Yeah.
So much radical acceptance of what does this mean for us as a family and as a community in the long term.
Right. And I think that we had been setting up our kids that we thought school wasn't going to return anyway, right? So it wasn't a big surprise to us. It was just more like, oh, so it now is absolutely real, right? And so we were trying to figure out what that was. In the meantime, teachers kept teaching. And so one of the things that's been hard, I think, for us is that we've kind of come with this radical acceptance to say, okay, look, the new normal is not very normal, right? And so we're having to come into whatever this reality is. And I think our schools believe that it's still the old normal, right? That all the kids should be able to do their assignments on time. They should be able to hand in things. It's just like it was, except they're at home. And it's not even close to like it was, right? Our teachers aren't teaching as much, right? They don't spend as much time. Sometimes they do.
This is what happens to us. We get ourselves worked up, right?
Oh,
and I have to keep coming back to, they're trying to figure it out. They don't know what they're doing. But this is what happens. Like, we take turns on who gets super irritable and then who tries to bring the other one down from trying to practice being non-judgmental. Because our emotion mind starts to kick in and how frustrated we get with this.
I just think that we and I mean we as like everybody have to figure out this is not the same. And just because you're now at home doesn't mean you can do the same things over and over again, expecting that everything is going to be work out just fine. And so that our kids are feeling, right? They're upset that they're not getting the usual reviews before tests. They're upset that they're not getting the assignments actually told to them. And we validate that because they're right. And yet that's the expectations. And so there's a big miss between the expectations and what's that the kids have and what the teachers are doing.
Right. And you can see, so that kind of just fuels our frustration, our anger. I think I said at some point last night, I was like, maybe I'll just unenroll them from school and then we won't have to do any of the work.
Which of course our kids heard and said, that means we don't have any school. And we're like,
and I had to highlight that was an emotion-minded thought in the moment of frustration as one of them was in tears. And so I just, I feel like all I do is complain and complain and complain about the school thing. And so I realized school may or may not change about what they decide to assign. And with the help of, two really good friends of ours and conversations I was having last night and their validation helped me realize, like, the school can have their requirements and we could change our expectations. And that helped by just like radically accepting that the school might not change. They may keep giving all of these assignments.
Right.
That you and I and the kids, we're going to work on changing our expectations. And again, it comes back to that accumulating positive in the long term that we talked about the other day of what are your values and why is my priorities? And are you living your life in line with them? And I think for us during this COVID-19, where we are really trying to figure out how we are going to thrive during this time rather than just survive it, we're going to spend some time really looking at our family values, what we want out of it, and then shift our expectations around school, around exercise, around family time to fit our priorities and goals. And that's what I want to encourage you to do. I don't know, everybody's schools and districts and wherever you're located might be completely different on expectations. This is just where we are for our expectations around our school and our kids, because I don't want to come out of this time resenting it, being angry, and really want to come out of it and say, how did we grow? How is this time for us rather than happening to us?
Yeah, I think that's true, right? And so I'm probably having a little bit harder shift. She's made that shift in her mind, which is great, and she's going to help me try to make this shift. That the upshot of that all is that they still have to, I worry about those grades, and society still has, at least here in the U.S., we still have expectations that you're going to have good grades to get into some of these programs, right? And so we've got a seventh grader who's trying to get into some of these more like STEM type programs, right? So he's got to have these good grades. And so I think that he rightfully is worried about, well, what happens if we stop school like we normally do? Are my grades going to drop, right? And so we have to worry about that piece. At the same time, yeah, it just seems like if we keep emphasizing what the school is emphasizing, all we're doing is supporting the academic child, which is actually why we wrote our curriculum to begin with, was to support the whole child, right? And so we're trying to figure out how to live that piece.
Yeah, and I think that's such a key point I just want to make about radical acceptance, right? That we radically accept we're going to shift, we radically accept we're going to do this, we radically accept that we're not going to, the school's not might not change. I don't know if maybe they will, but might not change, and we have to accept our sins. But just because we can say this once right now doesn't mean we're going to be in acceptance all the time. And that's where like turning our mind back and reminding ourselves. Yeah. And, I feel like we're really fortunate and blessed that there's two of us to help highlight and notice that. And I'm sure once we tell the kids this, they will be able to be very mindful of noticing when we're kind of getting caught on that. But also we have to notice for them, like noticing that my straight A student the other day was studying and doing homework till like 4:20. We had to pull them on Monday out of school because they were worried they were going to get behind already on Monday. We had to make them stop, and then they were back studying later that night. That if my straight A student who like gets all his work done all the time is getting behind and getting anxious about that, then it's time for us to really make a shift for our family.
Yeah, and one example there is Monday night he skipped the family game because he had too much work to do. He would have felt he was more comfortable getting his work done because that was really hard for him, right? He wants to get it done because he knows about want to get good grades, and so he skipped it. And I supported that, and I thought, oh, that's too bad.
Right, and I won't say it's so much that he wants to get good grades. He gets his grades are strong based on the work that he does. He doesn't want to he doesn't like to be behind.
Right, so
he likes to make sure he has his assignments completed. This is what he's been assigned, and so he needs to follow through on that.
Great. So let's shift. Good right. Call. So we've got about 15 minutes here.
Right. Can I just talk about building mastery, and then we'll talk about flipping ahead?
I'm going right to the board.
Okay.
Exactly. Let's go to the board.
All right, go. So here's what I did for building mastery, and again, here you back in here. And we talked about doing things that you don't enjoy. So look at me. I'm in workout gear this morning.
Yeah.
Because I worked out and did a boot camp online this morning for the first time in 4 weeks, where I was doing them 3 to 5 days a week live, going to my boot camps at 5:30 in the morning, that I haven't done it. So today, with a lot of pushing and a lot of just kind of reflecting yesterday, and yesterday was a really, really hard day for me, trying to build mastery around technology, which did not happen. I accidentally deleted the entire Steps A class off of Facebook yesterday, and now I'm working to get my hard drive recording back up there. But that took up most of my day yesterday because I do not have mastery on technology. So after that long day, like you forced me to go to bed at 8:30 last night.
Just go.
And then kind of cleaned up and did some work and took care of the kids and everything. And so I did go to bed at 8:30 last night, which meant that I got up when my alarm went off at 5:30 this morning. And here's the thing about doing workouts for me of any type. I don't actually enjoy them. I think I said this on Monday, they're truly a build mastery activity. I do them so that I can acknowledge the accomplishment of doing something hard, because the intrinsic motivation to exercise is not there. And the motivation to do it, even though I don't enjoy it, comes from the fact that because of my lupus, and fibromyalgia, I get really, really tired. And the more tired I get, the more I don't want to exercise and move. However, exercise and sleep and movement are the most effective treatments for my exhaustion. And so it goes back and forth. So when I do exercise, it's got to be this huge force to get me to start, because having not done it for a while makes it really exhausting for me to get through the day. So I did that today, and that was just a huge sense of building mastery. And now I'm trying to drink the water. Like exercising, move my body for 30 minutes a day, and drinking the water are like my building mastery goals for this week.
Right. So you don't enjoy the in the moment of the exercise, right? Yeah. It's really hard, and it's great that you get through that, right? And for me, I love the in the moment, right? And I could be tired, but I'm out in the peace and quiet. It's just and so of the roads and so forth, and so it's just really a different experience. So one of the things though that I said to Liz last night was, look, all you're doing by being frustrated right now at 8 o'clock at night is just fueling some of your anger and frustration. I said, just go, because it's not helping anybody at this point, and you're then going to be tired again. So just go to bed. I'll take care of this, and then get back to some of the goals that keep you who you are. Get back to some of the things that you want to do, right? And so I'm really proud of him for getting up. So that's great. So let's now talk to about our C then, because we talked about, and keep in mind, so in the big umbrella picture here is the ABCs are to help us with our emotional vulnerabilities, right? It's to help us with so that our emotions don't impact us as strongly, that we have some good success. We have some good patience with when we do experience those emotions, when we do start sucking up some of that emotion from our kids and so forth, that we can actually absorb more of it because we're in a good spot, right? And so we covered accumulating positives. Let's talk about just building mastery. The last one here is coping ahead. So what do you want to talk about coping ahead?
So coping ahead, and thanks for your points, Jamie and Jacqueline. Those are really helpful and appreciate that. Coping ahead is about getting ready, of knowing when something hard or something that's going to have a difficult emotional response from you coming up. Like that may be going into preparing for a difficult conversation with somebody, like a difficult conversation with your partner, or a conversation with your kids, or going to a business meeting, or whatever it might be. For our kids, sitting down to take a test, and knowing that maybe some anxiety and panic may arise in them when they go to do that assignment. What skills and what strategies do you use in that moment to help get through those emotions? Not what problem solving we do ahead of time,
right,
to get ready, like study or kind of map out the conversation and your talking points. That's what I think about as problem solving. But coping ahead is like, imagine yourself going into the conversation or sitting down to take the test, and your worst fear happens,
right,
and that emotion comes up. What do you do in that moment? So for example, we have a radio interview coming up later this morning, which for me, interviews cause me a high level of anxiety. I get really, really talkative and not as concise as maybe Jim might be or somebody else, because my anxiety goes up. So when we finish this conversation today, I will actually go through and I'll practice some cope ahead for what are some of the things we're going to want to do, what some of the paced breathing techniques that I will do during it. Jim will probably have some cues for me that he often does when we have interviews, which is like, and I say we have interviews, I mean like this past week, it's been happening, which is incredibly grateful and a brand new thing for us, for me especially. And what am I going to do in that moment to kind of get back to being mindful, not judging myself, and using some paced breathing to bring down the physical anxiety in my body. So those kind of things, or when we have difficult conversations, like yesterday when I had to say, like, it's really hard for me that you go into the office and prep and work and do your classes, whereas my only times that I end up in the office are when I have a live stream, a client, or a meeting, but I'm not getting any of those hours of prep and work and productivity time. And like being able to have that conversation with you, like I had to cope ahead for knowing that might be difficult for us to kind of work through that,
right,
and figure that out.
And we're still trying to get a hold of the schedule, right? So the office that we have in our house is kind of like a do not disturb place, right? That's just kind of for the parents, although the printer's in here, right? The kids will come in and get things off the printer. And so I have, and I recognized this yesterday because I actually had taught 3 classes yesterday for the university. Well, 2 for the university and 1 for us, right? So I got a lot of office time. So I did have a lot of that prep time. And I knew that was valued time that Liz then was going to be absorbing more of the shock and awe from the whole education stuff from our kids that they were getting. All right. And so it's just hard that way. And so I think just trying to understand that and then come out and try to be supportive is the best I can do. Yet I think that you feel really kind of rung up. At the end of the day, we're really tired, and I don't know who this is.
So that's Lynn.
Lynn? Lynn commented that she wished she could go to bed at 8 o'clock, right? And, yeah, or 8:30. Wouldn't that be nice? And I feel like we are putting in more hours, more exhausted hours in our day than we had when our kids were going to school and and I was at the office, right? It just, there's no question. It's not any downtime, right? Just go, 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 and go. And by the time you get to 7, 8 o'clock, you're exhausted and there's been no time for you, right? And so, how do you find that balance? I think we're still trying to find that as well. I think that if you know that you're going to have an emotion, though, that you get to towards the end of the day, or maybe it's in the middle of the day, where you have had a difficult time before emotionally, how do you cope ahead? What happens if that comes up again, right? And so I always like to say, what happens if the train goes off the tracks? What's my skill if everything goes off the rails, right? I hope it doesn't, and if it does, I at least now I'm prepared and I'm not caught off guard about how do I not snap at my partner? How do I not snap at my kids? How do I get myself back together? Put myself back together without hurting some of the people that I love the most.
Right. And sometimes that's just like taking a break. I think you did that really well with Ashton last night. Like he was really struggling around his test and you were trying to help him and coach him and he just kept getting more upset and you kept getting more upset. So we tag teamed.
Yep.
I went and sat with him for a while. You kind of went back to the group that we were doing. And then I think when you got more regulated, you then came back and said, all right, I need to come back and work through this with him.
Right. And if you don't have someone to tag team, though, right, because that's going to be some of our families as well, then just taking a break, right? Say, hey, I know I'm frustrated. I can see that you're frustrated. Let's just take a break for a half an hour. And so we had Ashley go take a shower. That often helps him, right? Just trying to do something. There's a distraction. So we talked about that.
Or he went and took a nap for a little while.
With our accepts, right.
Right.
So,
and that's kind of just like, when your anger goes up, this is just totally jumping into some of our emotion regulation. Sometimes when anger goes up and you want your anger to come down, just gently removing yourself from the situation is effective. Right. And that's part of what this cope ahead is. Thinking about, of all skills and strategies that you have, what works for you and what will you do when the train goes off the track, off the rails? Is that is that the right metaphor?
Yes, off the rails. Yes.
I'm so bad with metaphors. But figure out what works, right? So walking away works really well when you start to battle with one of the kids or with me. We just have to gently take ourselves away. And by gently, I mean like saying, hey, I need a break, or one of us tagging in, or like, hey, you go take a shower. I need to go just chill out for a little bit. And then we'll come back and talk about this after the shower of 10, 15 minutes when our emotion might come down a little bit. And then during that time, we also have to practice lots of non-judgmental stance so that we're not just fueling that anger with all the judgments we have about why all of this is even happening.
So it's important at that point when you get frustrated or your emotions start to drive the bus, right? We talked about accepts already once, is that maybe you have to come back and use a distracting skill so that you don't lash out, so that you don't keep fueling that emotional fire and the emotions keep driving the bus. And so I think you can do some of the accept skills, like those crisis survival skills, along with that coping head. So what am I going to do when I get stuck with Ashton again, right? So we'll do this, right, sometimes. And so it's not healthy for either one of us, right?
And by stuck, you mean like emotionally stuck.
Yeah,
like you guys,
correct, right.
Not stuck with him.
No, right. So the idea is that he goes into one thing that it shouldn't be this way, it shouldn't be this way, right? He's just adding fuel to that fire, the woulda, couldas, and shouldas. And I'm here, well, that's how it is. Like, just radically accept it. And he's still stuck here, like, it shouldn't be that way. And I radically accept it, right? And all we do is go, so he's coming up with one skill, I'm coming up with another skill. I'm like, okay, we're going nowhere fast, right? So let's just take a break together here.
And that's part of just getting into wise mind and that kicking in for you.
So I think having that, what you're going to do ahead of time to cope with that worst case scenario, have it in your back pocket so you don't have to think, oh gosh, now what do I do, right? Because I don't think really clearly when I'm upset and angry, right?
Right. And I think not only even have it in your back pocket, mentally rehearse it. Like when you're going into like these situations, these conversations, these meetings, these interactions that tend to be difficult or might be difficult coming up, I want you to do like some imaginal rehearsal of how it could completely go off the rails and what you're going to do in that moment. because that is going to increase the likelihood that you engage in those skillful behaviors. If we can practice it, right? Same with like doing role plays and things like that. The more you rehearse it, the more likely you'll be able to do it. So do some imaginal rehearsal for what that conversation is going to be like. But don't, like, you can imagine it going well, but don't just do that. Imagine it going well, and then imagine it going off the rails. And how are you going to regulate and move through that effectively when it does go off the rails?
Right. What skill are you going to use? Right. So it doesn't end up blowing up into a bigger issue that's there. So again, I'll let you talk.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'll let you talk. Go ahead. So back to, if we're doing to the accepts, is when your emotions get above 65.
They don't know what accepts is because they were not in class yesterday.
Oh, sorry. So accepts is one of our distress tolerance skills, right? It's over on the side of we have this big dialectic that we do with our emotional regulation skills. One is acceptance, that we have to accept who we are and how we are. And the other is change, that we want to improve being a better partner, being a better parent, being a lot of things, right? Both have to happen, right? Both are going to happen. Oh, I got to be over here in Instagram. Both are happening. We've got to decide which part of the balance do I need the help on, right? And so if we're too much in emotion mind, right, then I need to use some of my crisis survival skills, because my emotions are driving the bus, which often don't make good decisions, right? They're not very effective. And once my emotions can come down below that level of 65 or higher, right, they're below 65, now I can use some change skills, which is what this is, coping ahead.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Were you going to talk about accepts or no?
No, go ahead.
Okay. No, and so just I'll give you a brief, like the accepts skill that we have up here. It's about just how do you effectively distract? And we'll go through that maybe on Friday about distractions. But just think about that, like shifting your attention away from your emotion strategically can keep you from acting on that emotion. And so that's where like distracting sometimes is totally not effective and can take us down a hole of getting procrastination. And when emotions are high, it can be incredibly effective. So yesterday, like you distracted by moving back to our small group as a way of not only gently removing yourself, but then putting your attention into participating in the group as a way of trying to
doing something else so that my emotion
so that you didn't act on it,
correct.
But not even so it came down, but also just so you didn't act on like getting into an argument, making it worse, shooting out an email to somebody impulsively or emotionally. That was part of that. So maybe we'll talk more about that on Friday.
We can do that. Right. I'm looking at time.
Thank you guys for joining us this morning. Hopefully this was helpful and you have some takeaway points of just how to keep accumulating positives and building mastery during your day. And then think through if there is any difficult situations coming up that emotions may come up and get pretty high. And how could you cope ahead? Think about some skills you can use during that time and rehearse that in your head to increase the likelihood that you'll use them at that time. And thank you for your comments. Jacqueline, Jamie, Lynn, those are all really helpful. Keep using your skills and validating your partners. I'm glad you guys are all here, and we will see you on Friday morning for back here for parenting, and then Thursday
for the
skills class, which we might go back to Zoom. So if you've been having your kids watch that, follow on Facebook or Instagram so we can announce what our platform is going to be. We're going back and forth between the two and trying to figure out what the best platform is to get the skills and the classes out there in a safe way to as many people as possible.
Right. The only thing I want to say is please be good to yourself. These are hard times, are difficult, all right? And keep trying to find time if you can, all right, to be you, right? Try to keep doing some of those habits and those goals and those values that keep you who you are. Squeeze them in somewhere. They're valuable.
That's so good.
Go skillfully, and we'll see you on Friday.
All right. See you Friday, everybody. Thanks.